Awesome. Let's do it. So just a few short words about me. I studied maths and computer science at Merton College, Oxford. I dropped out after a year. I founded OXSC, which did math camps and math revision courses for IB students. So yeah, and currently I work as an engineer for Gnosis. In my free time, obviously apart from being a learning junkie, I like life hacking stuff. I practice some spiritual practices, and I love to travel. So the first question you all have is, what is Solvio? Well, Solvio is nothing, but what will it be? So Solvio will be a decentralized education system. Now let's talk about that in more detail. While there are a number of services that together will turn this vision into reality, here I'll talk about just a particular three. So Solvio Learn is the first one, and it will be a personal curriculum producer. But it's not enough just to learn. The major problem today with self-learning is that there are very not effective ways to get credentials. Effective credentials are super important in the modern world as they work like signals. This is what makes this proposal not only a learning system, but an education system. Solvio Advanced will be a decentralized credential provider. Finally, a math step-by-step validator, which I currently call Pruvio. Also note that all the names here are provisional and should be decided collectively. Also, I use the word services here because I think it's better to refer to a product as an end product, either consumer or a B2B product. These services may have their own separate apps or be part of a single app and therefore product. So let's start with Solvio Learn. Solvio Learn will essentially be a semantic aggregator, ranker, and search engine for learning resources. Now here I use learning resource in the most generalized sense. So it could be online resources, real-life learning, or work experience. Let's look at each of these in slightly more detail. So the first possibility are online learning resources. So that can include courses from platforms like Udemy or Coursera, videos or playlists on YouTube, articles from independent blogs or from blog platforms such as Medium, or for example, ebooks from Amazon's ebook platform. It could also be a specific podcast episode or number of episodes, as well as, for example, a Stack Exchange link with an answer and some comments. So for example, I have recently self-taught myself a few kind of very technical topics, such as computability theory and recently cryptography. And I actually found that I got the most insight by, after going through the lecture notes, looking up some very specific questions on a Stack Exchange and reading the whole discussion there. So there's questions where, if you read every single comment, it can take you an hour. But I found that reading at least some of them, or all of them, is what gave me the most understanding of the topic at hand. That's just a personal example. So how does it work currently? Currently, the web is very fragmented when it comes to recommending which way and in which order to learn. For the most common self-learning topics, which is probably programming, there exist these things called roadmaps and these things called awesome lists, mainly on GitHub. Over that, Solvio Learn will provide the following advantages. You can learn not just programming, but anything. It's also a semantic aggregator, which gives advantages for individual resources because you can filter and search by the difficulty, the possible lengths, and the quality that other people have assigned to it. You can, and then even more importantly, the interaction between the individual resources. So each resource will have a number of learning dependencies, which are also categorized by strength. Soft dependencies, it will be cool to know that if you want to study the original thing. And hard dependencies, it's very, very important that you understand, for example, modular arithmetic if you want to learn cryptography. And then not just dependencies, which is kind of going backwards, but also what topics this resource or this topic allows for. So that's going forwards. So maybe giving the student some motivation to learn something. They know that if they will learn modular arithmetic, then they will be able to learn cryptography, and then they will be able to work on decentralizing the world. And it's not only learning resources, it's also, for example, jobs. So what jobs they will be able to perform if they learn some of these topics. But all of this comes down to one main benefit: being able to produce a full learning path that is parameterized by how much the student wants to spend to achieve that particular goal, such as learning a topic or getting a job, their skill level, etc. So just to give an example, say I want to learn blockchain, and I'm a 12-year-old kid. So then the Solvio Learn app would show me the exact path to being able to achieve the knowledge to understand blockchain. So maybe I would start with some electrical engineering, move on to basic computer science and programming, then also some mathematics in the meantime as a different branch. Then learn cryptography, distributed systems, and finally, I can learn about blockchain. So this will produce a full learning path that can be parameterized based on whatever the student desires. So Solvio Learn won't only allow you to search online resources. The learning resources can also be real-life learning. So this includes things like short-term intensive courses, such as math camps, or even conferences, whatever can be used for learning or for motivating oneself to learn. But also long-term courses, the traditional trimester, semester, or year-long courses, or for example, in the case of IB or A-levels, a 2-year course. It can also include tutoring, both physical and online. So here's a side note. Solvio Learn will also be the first ever commission-free tutoring platform. So the reason that no good aggregator, no good Uber for tutoring has arisen in the last few years is essentially that the economics don't work out. Nobody wants to give for a long time thing 20% of their income to an app because they can just arrange the sessions with the student individually. But this, if it's commission free and we have an app for it, then there will actually be a positive reason to use this app long term for both the student and the teacher. Cool. So it can also be, one sec, I just, okay, good. I just had a message, so maybe I thought that the quality isn't good. The learning resources can also be work experiences. So I had a call yesterday with my really good friend, Alex, and he kind of gave me this idea. So I've incorporated it. Oh yeah, so the work experiences can either be Solvio internal, such as teaching others, grading others' works, we'll get to that in a second, or Solvio external, whether it's programming, internships, you get the idea. So we've already said that learning is not enough, and credentials are equally, if not more, as for example, the academic Brian Kaplan would argue, important. The Solvio model will allow any credential provider. This can include platforms like Udacity and Coursera, websites, content providers, such as Codecademy or Khan Academy, and even credentials from the legacy education system, such as IB, SATs, or A-levels. Now, the first 2 points are informal sources, so we can really use those for our system. But they not only offer credentials, but they only offer credentials in 2 areas: short answer science questions and coding. Anything that is subjective, i.e. difficult to understand for a machine, essentially all of humanities, and even parts of the sciences as well, will have a problem. The solution to that will be called Solvio Advance. Additionally, we will incorporate computer algebra into these platforms. The end result will be Pruvio. So let's have a look at these two, Solvio Advance and Pruvio. Solvio Advance is a decentralized grading or credentialing system. There are numerous possibilities to offer or implement. The original idea was that you create something, for example, essays, science problems, math problems, code, podcast, presentation, whether it's a physical meetup or a virtual meetup, and you will be graded in a peer-to-peer manner. But it can also include teaching, and even if none of this works out, if the game theory behind it doesn't work out, and over iterations we find that that people are cheating, that our system is not safe or not secure, there exists a scenario where cheating is less costly than learning, then we might introduce testing as well, or the market might introduce this, which can of course be either physical, online, or for example, one-to-one online. So how could all of this work? So for example, let's look at the peer-to-peer grading or the peer-to-peer testing. So you would think that, you might get 5 people to grade an essay on to what degree did religion cause the 30 Years' War, and then you might take the average. But the game theoretical problem with that is that the reviewers could essentially be cheating themselves. They might not read it, they might not care about it, they would just give a random grade. So this is a problem that must be solved, and I think that one of the solutions is this game theoretical concept called a Schelling game, which essentially works like this. 7 people will give it a grade. For now, let's just assume that the grade is good or bad. It's a good work or it's a bad work. And the majority of those people, since it's 9 it can't be a tie. The majority of those people will assume that they were correct, and they will get all the proceeds from whatever was the incentivization for them to actually grade it in the first place. And the others will assume that they haven't done their job, that they didn't read it, or that they reported incorrectly, and they will lose both the proceeds or possibly even a stake that they put up. So this is essentially a game theoretical solution to be able to bring real world data, such as the quality of work, onto an information technology platform such as a blockchain in a decentralized way. And then of course we could think of combining Schelling games with an average, which would probably be the best scenario. But here I just want to sketch out one possible solution. Cool, so now we discussed how Solvio Advance can work. Let's have a look at how Pruvio can work. So what is Pruvio? It's a tool that will essentially be able to understand math. So while there are many, many applications for this, the two most immediate ones are a step-by-step math learning process. So currently, websites like Khan Academy, they only check your answer, while this will allow to check every step and also give hints for the next step. And additionally, for high-level problems, which includes high-level problems in high school and math Olympiads, as well as all university education in mathematics. They are proof search questions rather than numeric search questions. So this will allow us to learn for those questions and also train for those questions, and also
Hello, how are you doing?
Could somebody mute themselves, please? Okay. And also get credentials for solving those problems. Sorry. Now we're getting into the next thing, which is that there are, in my opinion, so many beautiful things about this. Let me mention just a few. So in my mind, a mathematical proof is synonymous with deductive reasoning. And that is one of education's major goals. The ability for a student to learn math at their own pace, step by step, is powerful. And in my opinion, will really revolutionize math education. So this is coming from a 5-year math teacher, part-time and full-time. Another cool thing is Pruvio fits both sides of Solvio, learning and credentialing. And it will also provide incredible value independently. So I would actually be happy pursuing this as my startup if I didn't have the idea of Solvio. Anyways, we could offer the Pruvio service to schools for learning, homework, and testing, universities for entrance exams, problem set homeworks, and final exams, math Olympiads, or we could even start our own, as well as platforms that I already mentioned, like Khan Academy or Coursera. On a business level, this could be actually the deciding factor in them deciding to integrate with Solvio credentialing. So this app, if it's really cool, it will give us leverage to negotiate with them, to integrate with the Solvio system. So now we've introduced the 3 main services: Solvio Learn, Solvio Advance, and Pruvio. Now, you can see a few threads running through this discussion. Let's look at 3 of them. Let's look at the state of education. So there's informal education, which is improving super fast, but doesn't have effective credentialing. And then there's formal education, which compared to the world that we can create and live in with technology, is very rigid and inflexible. So the goal of this project is to combine the best of both worlds, to give a formal background / credentialing model to informal education. So that's really the gist of the whole project. So I described an education model, but an education model really sits on top of a learning model. Education is just learning with credentials. So what will be the specific learning model? So while in theory the Solvio model is learning agnostic, I think that it will be most suitable for, number 1, self-learning, number 2, short-term intensive courses, and number 3, short-term work. Now, there is ample evidence that short-term courses actually work better than long-term courses. I've read studies on this. The only subjects that were given as exceptions were languages and music. My response to that would be that the whoever was doing the study just wasn't creative enough. Obviously, if you're going to teach language in the same way as you teach it 5 hours per week, except you're going to teach it for 1 week, i.e. memorization and of vocabulary and past tenses, you're not going to remember anything. But if we compare that, for example, to an intensive language stay, an intensive language travel, I would argue that is so much more efficient. And similar with music, if you're going to try to cram 1 hour of learning per day into 10 hours of learning per day, it's not going to work. But if you practice for 1 hour per day for a few months, and then the short-term course can be seen as a concert or a music tour, then that is much more efficient. So essentially, self-learning is limited by interest, really bounded by it, or enthusiasm. But if that's present, it's pretty much undoubtedly the most cost-efficient way to learn, because the costs are 0 or almost 0. Now, we're designing an engineering system here, and it's my belief that in an engineering system, the most effective solutions should really be built for. While self-learning is not possible in current formal education, precisely because there isn't a credentialing system for it. So the most efficient way to learn is not possible in the current system. While in this system, the system is actually built for it, but also allows many other forms of education. Now let's look at the third idea. So a world with high transaction costs, like the world we lived in until the advent of the internet, will lead to full-time jobs. Low transaction costs, on the other hand, enable freelancing. Now, both personal experience and professional studies have shown that freelancers are happier, more motivated, and more productive. This makes a lot of sense if you think about the way humans work and act. If you can capture your entire value, you will be much more motivated and hence happier in your work than if part of your value is captured by your boss. We merely make it possible to freelance as a teacher, or as a student. And essentially, we want to sort of calibrate or standardize or maybe normalize education to the current level of technology. By the way, offhand, so a lot of the stuff that I said in this slide comes from Disruption Theory by Ben Thompson. So while we're talking about it, value tends to be captured by service providers in a world with high transaction costs. So that's why up until 1990, the time that the internet was invented, newspapers, hotels, taxi companies, universities, all of these captured a lot of the value because there was no way to achieve the real content without going through the content provider. But now that we have the internet and transaction costs are very low, then those the power of those institutions is being disrupted. And essentially, you can think of Solvio as the Uber or the Airbnb for education. And also, the disruption theory predicts that value will be accumulated by essentially aggregators. So yeah, Uber, Airbnb, Google for articles, or Facebook for articles. And those are the aggregators are those who control the entry point of the consumer experience. So that's our goal, to be the go-to app for looking up anything to learn. Cool. And that's the end of part 1.